Welcome to Season 4 of the A New Narrative podcast. I'm Sam Zagar, your projector guide and host. I've been known as being source-based in my work with human design for years. This season, we're going to be exploring source, but you might be surprised at what source I'm actually talking about and how it's been guiding my work. I hope you'll join me as I interview guests or do some solo processing on my adventure back to the source.
I was born 4 years before Ra. And I was born in 1944. He was born in 1948. And that's important because the world was pretty much shaken from 1960 to 1972 by a major conjunction. I think it was Pluto and Uranus.
Mm-hmm.
And it was wild. It was a wild, wild, crazy time. You know, political leaders were dying, being assassinated. I mean, it was just crazy. I grew up on the west coast of California, so I was into the hippie thing. And my drug of choice was LSD. I really liked it, and I started doing it before it was illegal. Some pretty big names in psychology back then got into it, Timothy Leary being one. I mean, it was a wild ride. Ra wasn't quite old enough, I don't think, to really get on that. Plus, he was in Canada at that age, you know, in the early part of that. So a lot of stuff happened that he picked up on kind of later, and that's important to know. He was living in Ibiza, I'm sure you know that,
Mm-hmm.
in a pretty broken down house because he didn't have any money. Ibiza at that time was a party island, meaning that summers, all kinds of people from Europe flooded the place. I happened to live in Mallorca, which is the capital island of the Balearic Islands, so it's not too far from there. I was pretty poor too. That was just the way you were if you were young back then and getting and interested in things that were going on. So, Ra's story was that this voice spoke to him nonstop for 8 days, 8 nights. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I had voices speaking to me all the time when I was stoned in acid, so I'm willing to believe that. I just don't think it came from Jupiter. I don't believe that. He was doing LSD. He admits it. He says so. And he says so with a certain amount of aplomb and pride.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't ashamed of it or worried about it. Yeah, he learned a lot, as did I. There weren't very many there wasn't much material back then to read. A book came out in 1968, however, that was written by Carlos Castaneda. And the first was a series of books. The first one was titled The Yaqui Way of Knowledge. So here's this guy, Carlos Castaneda. He's going to USC, one of the biggest public universities in California, quite well known, high level academic achievement as a university. He's working on his PhD in botanical anthropology. So he wanted to go into the Southwest and learn about the healing plants that were used by the indigenous people. So he did that. Now, he never made it really clear if he was in very southern Arizona or northern Mexico. It doesn't really matter a whole lot. And he found this guy, Don Juan was his name, who claimed to be a sorcerer. Maybe not quite the same way we think of a sorcerer. He didn't have a wand or anything, but he was well versed in the use of peyote and datura, and he taught Don Juan quite a lot. So I read the book that Castaneda wrote. I read it in 1968 when I was living in Arizona. I was going to the Native American peyote church. So aside from doing acid, I was also going to these all-night religious sessions that were very intense with American Indians and on peyote. It was quite illuminating.
And you're only about 24 years old then.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes, it was the summer I turned 25.
Okay.
It was a big deal. to be reading those books at that time, living in this little tiny town in northern Arizona, where I would go to a canyon called the Colorado River Gorge. It's about a half mile straight down. It's not a sloping canyon like the Grand Canyon, and it's on the Navajo reservation. And I would go there and take LSD and trip out. It's quite something to stand on the edge of something that goes straight down for a half a mile. You're looking down in the backs of eagles. So this was a wild time. There was people were doing all kinds of crazy things. Standing there, I realized that the essence, see, there was this almost irresistible urge to jump in.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. The urge to jump would be strong.
Yeah, it's because the nature of a hole is that it wants to be filled. I mean, that was a tremendous insight at that point in my life to understand that when you're dealing with physical phenomena, they actually have a physical influence on you. Usually we're so locked up in our trips, mental trips, doing this and doing that and scurrying hither and thither. We don't really pay attention. We don't go out in nature a whole lot. So I had a lot of really trippy experiences there. An engagement with a rattlesnake that was quite mind blowing and pleasant. So reading that book at the same time that I was living in that environment was really an eye opener. One of the things that Don Juan did to Carlos Castaneda, see, he kept telling Castaneda, you're in your head too much, because Carlos was very intellectual. He had all these questions that he wanted answers and yada, yada, yaka, yaka. And Don Juan was trying to get him out of his head and into his body. Gee, I wonder who else did that.
I'm like, I'm seeing some
Mm,
parallels.
right? Okay, so one of the first things that Don Juan had Castaneda do, and this is just hysterically funny to me, he took him. It was late evening. He took him into a small little house, one room, nothing in it, nothing at all, empty room. And he said to him, "Okay, I'll be back in the morning, and by then you need to have found your place in this room." poor, poor Castaneda, being such an intellectual, he's thinking the whole time, where is my place? Where could my place be? Is it over here by this wall? Oh, I don't know. Is that it? I can't tell. I don't think that's it, but I'm not sure. And he wandered around that room. Finally, he was reduced to crawling on his hands and knees, peering at the floor as closely as he could, trying to find his place. And finally, in the very early hours of the morning, he took his jacket off and folded it up as a pillow and fell asleep. And when Don Juan came in the next morning, the first words out of his mouth were, "Oh, good, I see you found your place." The body knows. And I personally think this was sort of one of the key triggers for the whole thing with the arrows, the environment one. Find your environment. We made a big mistake in a sense, by telling people what their environment is. You should have to find it. You don't get so much out of things as somebody tells you. It's like if somebody gives you the answer to a Zen koan, it doesn't do you any good. You don't get any aha revelation from it. So that's a big source. The Castaneda books, if you read them, I mean, he made Don Juan run down the side of a hill at night in the dark. He had to trust his body. Your mind is no good. And it was funny because I had to do the same thing. I was lucky I got to do it in daylight. But a friend of mine challenged me to run down this very steep hill on a very narrow path that was covered with what's called pea gravel. It's very slippery. It rolls under your feet. And the only way to do it is kind of run pretty fast in this sort of skiing motion. My mind didn't figure that out, but my body did. And oh God, what a trip that was! That was so exhilarating. The only people I know that get that kind of trip consistently are surfers. They have to be in their body. You have no choice. If you want to ride a big wave, you can't. Your mind can't be present. It can't. It can't keep up with what's happening.
Genuinely, this is why I like snowboarding. It scares the shit out of me, and I think it's physically exhausting for my type.
Uh
But
huh.
doing it every a couple times a year or whatever, it it really does get me out of my head because if I think
Yeah.
about turning, I'm going to catch an edge. Whereas if I just lean into it and just
Yeah.
go for the ride, it's so fun.
Yeah. I loved going in the ocean till I broke my hip. I couldn't
Oh,
because it's happening so fast. That ocean is in constant movement. There's currents are coming from two different directions. The place that I was, waves are coming, and there's all these weird currents and swishing around, and your body has to adjust to it all, and your mind can't. My mind would just shut down, and I just loved it. It was so freeing. So this whole thing of the body being the more important of the two, I firmly believe, because I know he must have read those books because there was so little to read along those lines back then. There wasn't much. I mean, there were a lot of weird books, the Book of Urantia, and Zen Flesh, stuff like that. But very few, nothing really about the body and its importance. Well, there was some things going on in the New Age movement and psychotherapy, but I don't think Ra was exposed to that. I'm pretty sure that he was exposed to the Don Juan books just because of the way he talks about
there
them.
are a couple materials, or I don't know, I guess I would call them materials, where they say so many similar things and they're from similar points in time. And two of them I wanted to bring up to your attention. Uh,
Sure.
and I wanted to do it with four specific phrases. So it seems to me that in the late 80s in particular, and maybe earlier than that, although I don't have a lot of experience with that. And I'm thinking more in the early 90s when the let's say the people who brought out stuff in the 80s may have caught on a little bit and then other people started to make it more popular, but these four phrases I've seen outside of human design in similar works in time: crystals of consciousness, shattered fragments, aspects of the totality, and illusion of separateness. Those four phrases are very common at that point in time for different works that were written. And I think, in particular, in 1987, when Barbara Brennan wrote the book Hands of Light,
Mhm.
um, she was talking about some very deep energy work about like the difference between the form and the consciousness, or like the body and the soul. And she says illusion of separateness. And this book is written in 1987.
Oh, well, maybe he got it from there, but who knows? Anyway, it didn't come from Jupiter. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it didn't because of what was happening in the world back then. It was that would be where you would have gotten that. I don't know what Ra's experience was. You know what the word rave refers to?
No.
It's a big giant party.
Oh, no, okay, absolutely. I know what that kind of rave meant. And that was
Okay,
always my
well,
first thought when he said rave. But I was like, oh,
right.
he means something different.
That's where it came from. He was living on, I told you, it was a party island. People were having these big giant parties and doing the good drugs and having a great time. And he talked about the human rave. See, when you get into that state where you're taking drugs, you do get into your body. I mean, you can watch your mind, which is pretty trippy to watch, but your body becomes pretty much the center of your attention because it's outrageous. It's just outrageous what's going on in your body all the time that we're completely cut off from. And you kind of have to be because you can't be driving a big heavy truck when you're stoned on acid. It's not
No,
going to work,
fuck no.
you
And
know.
I probably shouldn't admit this, but I drove my car once high on mushrooms, and the whole time I was like, this is a spaceship and everything is fake. And I know, honestly, it was like, you have to play it like a video game or you'll crash.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. I know it's astonishing. We I love my human body. It's a trial and a tribulation, but I had one experience with LSD where back then, one of the things that you wanted to achieve was white light. That was supposed to be enlightenment. So I actually got there one time. White light, that's all there was. Totally all there was. And after about, well, some period of time, I don't know how long because I was so stoned, I thought, this is really boring.
I would have thought the same thing. I'd be like, well, now what?
Yeah, right, exactly. Let's have some come on, let's get something going on here. Let's do something. Let's see something, have some experience and stuff. And there are books that talk about that too, that we came here for exactly that purpose, to be in a human body so we could experience life. Is, a way for our consciousness to experience life. And again, I don't know. You never know if any of this stuff is true. You can't know. You can know for yourself, but you can't really, you can tell it to other people. I try to be careful about what I say to other people when it comes to stuff I don't actually know through personal experience because I don't want to lead them down the wrong path. So at that same time, in late 60s, mid 70s, and up in the 80s, the New Age movement was taking off. It started with these big companies like TRW and some others were going to these week-long retreats, and they'd be staying at a hotel. There was a place not far from where I was living back then. I happened to know the owner's brother, and I got to go there a lot. So they would bring in, I don't know how familiar you are with the American psychologists back then, but Fritz Perls, for example, he's the father of Gestalt therapy.
Okay.
And they would bring in like Subramania, one of the big gurus from India. They had the Rolfers there. Talk about being put in touch with your body. They work on the connective tissue in your body. And I'll tell you what, man, you can't be daydreaming. You can't be having a nice time because that hurts really bad.
Okay.
And they're breaking up all these crystals that have formed on the connective tissue that limit your mobility to some extent. And again, I don't know what if Ra was exposed to any of that kind of stuff, but it was very prevalent. 70s, 80s, the 90s, it kind of started to cool off. I mean, there are still things happening just as there are today. Uh, when I came into human design, 1999, uh, I've been around for a while by then. I've been a long. It seemed to me like I'd been around for a long time. Uh, but boy, when my body took me to human design. Gee, isn't that amazing? What a surprise. Gate 46. It
Mm-hmm.
wanted me to go to a particular place and talk to a particular person. And that person happened to be my chiropractor, who had recently learned about human design and thought I'd be interested in it. And he gave me this short little 20-minute reading. He didn't really know much about it, but he did that. And I was pretty impressed. But my body had to hurt me. I had to hurt my back, so I'd go see the chiropractor to get that information. And he told me about Shaitan, who was living just, I don't know, 10 miles away from here. He was charging a couple of $100 for a reading back then.
Back then?
Yeah, it was a lot of money.
Holy Nike.
Yeah. So I went, got the reading, and he blew my mind. He blew my mind. I did not see how anybody could possibly know some of the things he said to me. I mean, I studied astrology for a few years in the 60s, but I didn't like it. You do with an astrology, it could fit anybody pretty much,
It's too archetypal.
Yeah. So I wasn't impressed with it. But human design, it was so specific to me and wasn't dealing with archetypes, it was dealing with my behaviors. And I was just blown away. So within a month, I took you had to take a basic class from Shaitan before you were allowed to take the advanced training. So I took his class. It was an 8-hour class. And then I went to Santa Fe for 7 days. studied with Zeno, who was the only person that Ra had licensed to teach others how to do this process. You could become a licensed analyst yourself. That was expensive. You had to rent a house and you had to rent a car. And I had to fly from California and eat most of your meals out and blah, 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 and pay them a handy chunk of change as well. And I didn't regret any of it. I'm pretty frugal and I wasn't working at the time. And I had a 2-year-old at home. Maybe he was 4. I don't know, somewhere in that range. So taking off for a week and going and spending that much money was pretty, well, it was a bold move for me, but I've never regretted it. I had been looking for stuff. I've been looking for the thing. And I came back after I got through with that. I tried to do a reading and it was piss poor. It
Wait,
was,
hold on a sec, Kip. I got to
yeah.
make sure I'm doing my math here accurately.
All right.
You started doing this in 1999?
Yeah.
You had a 4-year-old when you were 65?
Oh no, 1999, I was 55.
Jesus.
44 to 99. 40 plus 50 is 90.
I'm like, shit, I can't do math right now. I'm just looking at your body graph. I'm like, it says you're 80 years old.
I'm 81 in a week.
Minus 25. Oh shit. Okay, 55. Yeah, thank God. I can't do math today. I was like, but still, hold on. You had a kid when you were like 51?
Yeah.
That's
No,
amazing.
hey, this is a story in and of itself if you're interested.
Can I ask how old your wife was?
She's 13 years younger than I am, so she would have been 38.
That's so cool.
It was pretty cool.
That in itself was a very empowering little story I got to jot down. Okay. So
Well, let
Carrie.
me explain. Let me tell you how that came about.
Okay.
She wanted another kid. We already had a grown kid. Well, he was 16, but pretty, close to being adult. And she wanted another kid. I did not want another kid. I felt like I was too old. I don't want to have a kid in my 50s. I didn't
But you
want to be
did.
doing that thing with babies.
No choice.
And so she would bring it up, but she never uses force on me. She's just persistent. So I was watching this show on TV about people in the natives in New Guinea, and they live a very subsistence style life. And pigs are a treasure. So when a female pig, the sow, when she gets pregnant, they build this big, massive grass hut for her to go in to have her piglets. I went, wow, that's pretty cool, And they build that for the for the pig. They treasure that pig. They want everything to be cool for her. So the next scene is about America. And when the pigs are pregnant, they're living in this stall that's got, long pipe fencing around it. So it's like 6 inches between each pipe. And the piglets are put in the stall next door and they nurse through the bars. And I looked at that and my brain is going, okay, so over here, we cherish life. Over here, fuck life, man. We just want money.
It does sound very American when you say it that way.
Yeah. So then I went up to my wife and I said, okay, well, let's have a kid.
All right, I'm gonna need your wife to send me this pig documentary in case I need that in the future. This is
So
awesome.
all these things of, being human is being willing to change. If you can't change, if you can't adapt to what's going on, you're not going to have, well, in my opinion, of course, there are people that are happy with that. And they are truly happy. I don't get it,
Same, same.
but that's how they are. So a lot of what Ross says, if you really pay attention, he says stuff like this, most of what I say is just entertaining. Oh, yeah, I get that. It's true too. He contradicts himself without a second thought.
Yeah.
Boom, just like that. And the thing is, it's up to you. It's up to you. He once said, I don't want students, I want colleagues. I get that. I'm the
Yeah.
same way. I want people in my life that I can talk with. I don't mind, I share really a lot of information on Instagram, and it's for that specific reason. When when I finished after I came back from the training in New Mexico and found out I couldn't do a reading, Chaitan started a class. It met one Sunday a month. So 12 classes a year, and it was an 8-hour class. I studied with him for 3 years. That's about 300 hours of studying with somebody who's really good at human design. He was one of the early adapters. And by the time I was done, I could give a reading. One of my ways of learning is to write. So I started writing about all the centers and all the gates and all the channels to help me get it kind of organized for myself. I have the 1762 channel. It likes to do that sort of project. And I'm just whirring away on it. And it suddenly, I was going to put out a book, and this was before Shaitan's book came out and before Ra's book came out. I was way ahead of him. And then I went, well, wait a second. You know what I think I'll do instead? I think I'm going to make this much more available. I'm going to charge a price for readings that that people can afford. Instead of $200, I think I was charging maybe $100 for a reading,
Mhm.
and I would record it. And I can't keep myself from talking, so the recordings were longer than they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
But I didn't mind. I loved doing it, and there wasn't finding anything related to human design on the internet back then didn't happen. I had the first actual, well, I mean, I was on page one of Google for years, and I only got bumped from it because they wanted me to do a model, do the website so it would work well on a telephone. But unfortunately, I couldn't sit in front of a computer for over a year.
Mm.
And so I couldn't do it. And so that was it. They were done with me. I don't care much for Google since then.
I'm I'm very intrigued. So following along the years, so the first human design books would have been the White Book and the Black Book, and so simplistic. And then Zen Human Design came out in,
I don't even know. I never bought it.
well, and it's been like updated, right? So the original
Yeah.
Zen, I'm not quite sure when it came out, but there's very different information between the three books. And then the definitive book wasn't until like 2016, and that's seen as like,
Yeah, that's a lightweight book as far as I'm concerned.
yes, very
There's
much
nothing definitive about it. So you got to understand,
so.
Ra, he's living in this old broken down place in Ibiza, and these big parties are happening, and he doesn't have any money. And about that time, a lot of people from the States started traveling to India to go to the ashrams. Particularly, Osho was a really big draw. Satchidananda was a big draw. We used to call him Saka Bananas because we were pretty irreverent back then. And he has a very good mind for business.
Mhm,
I've heard that he was in marketing. Again, I don't know, but could very well be. I know this: he wanted money.
mhm.
You could tell that. These people were coming back from India with tales about Osho owning 15 Rolls Royces and blah blah this and blah blah that, and they were doing these parties. They would dance and sing all night long, and it was quite the revelatory experience. And the wheels were turning inside Ra's head. I'm pretty sure because there he is. He's living on Ibiza, and these people are coming through, and he goes into town and he goes to those places and he talks to these people. Being Canadian, he could speak English. It wasn't like he was French or German or something. And I think something just clicked. He had to market to well-to-do people. You know, you couldn't sell this kind of stuff back then to just anybody. It was a very small market. Not hippies, if it had come their way, they would have eaten it up, but they couldn't afford to spend any money. They didn't have money to spend. So
Right.
he had to figure out a way to reach these people. People, obviously, people going to India and staying there, you know, not having to work, had a fairly significant amount of money behind them, you know, families and so on and so forth. I know Shaitan did.
Hmm.
And he structured everything basically to reach those kinds of people. He wasn't interested in reaching the hoi polloi. He needed people with money because that's what he wanted. And I don't knock that. I mean, that's what he wanted. That's cool. One of the things that I took away from him is just be yourself. And you know how often you come across that phrase?
Yeah.
Just be yourself. End of story. And, but that's so hard to do. And he made it even harder in a way. But people like that challenge. And I don't know when the clock turned. I mean, I didn't make any kind of living off human design, even though I was selling at a reasonable price. And even though people were more likely to find me than anybody else on the internet, not that many people were searching.
I mean, you are exceptionally well known on social media and in particular Instagram. And the thing that always like jaw dropping every single time is I'm not well versed in human design on Instagram. I don't really follow people. I don't engage. I don't comment. I don't learn human design from other people on Instagram. But I would find someone would comment on my thing and I click on their name and they'd have like one post, two followers or something. And you would have already liked their one post that they've had. Like, no matter who I found on human design Instagram, you had engaged. Like, oh, Kip likes this one. Kip commented here. I'm like, how does Kip know about everybody? Like, you have to have more awareness of who is in human design than anyone else.
I don't know. My wife takes care of that. I make every morning she gets up and she's a generator.
Okay.
She likes this kind of work. She's blended caves. She's a 6-2 profile. She likes getting up early in the morning, going out there and getting her coffee and sitting there and looking at something. And she would go through the whole feed and she would find these things that she thought I would be interested in. And then after lunch, I would sit down with her and go through them with her. And I would dictate my answer to her.
That is the best.
I know it's pretty cool, isn't it? By the way, she does all the artwork on my posts.
I love this. Now, am I correct in remembering that you are a 5 and 4 relationship
Uh,
or 4 and 5?
Together we are, yeah, we're 5. You know, that's a bunch of bullshit. I have to tell you, that is such a bunch of bullshit. That is pure nonsense. I mean, if you just think about it,
Is the co-sleeping or the centers coming together?
any of that stuff, yeah, to me,
Well,
I,
I mean, you have more experience with this than most people. And
I
if,
have more experience with it now than Ra.
yeah. Well, and I mean, I don't think he was really, I mean, he was with lots of people for different lengths of time, but you've been with a person for a very long time. He swapped.
Yeah. See, we will celebrate our 50th anniversary in December.
Holy shit. Congratulations, kid.
I mean, most of my friends, good friends, are in Hawaii. And most of the men are my age, and most of their wives are about 13 years younger.
That's interesting.
And they're all still married.
You ever hear about it going the opposite direction where the woman is older?
I haven't, not personally, I haven't. Oh, wait, no, I take that back. There was a woman that I knew. Oh, what am I saying? My God, mother-in-law married a
Oh,
man who was younger.
I only ask. I'm like, I've recently gotten into another relationship and it's with a mental projector, but he's 10 years younger than me. He just turned 25. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is shocking. Um, but I don't
Hey, listen, you can take this out if you want, but men are reach their sexual prime at age 19. And I want to tell you from then on, slowly drops.
Well,
Women
all of my other
don't have
partners
that.
were older than me, and I know what you're talking about. And I definitely appreciate his youth, which is also
Yeah.
very wildly entertaining because he's a non-motored projector. So
You
that's a
know,
little intriguing.
people talk about projectors as not having any, you don't have any energy. Somebody actually said we were like vampires where we sucked energy out of the people around us. Just some of the stuff people come up with. If I didn't have energy, I'd be lying on the floor dead.
Yeah,
What are you, nuts? Or then
yeah.
the other one is, oh, you can't allow yourself to be conditioned. You can't avoid being conditioned. You're supposed to be conditioned.
That's one of
We're
the ones
absolutely supposed to be.
I'm
That's why
very
we're designed this way.
literally. I'm like, projectors
Yes.
are the sensitive beings that we are because we're meant to take on the other. It's more so like, don't over identify with what you take on from the other and find a way to take it off after.
Or don't. It doesn't matter. Whatever suits you, you know? I, all of my friends in Hawaii, all my male friends were generators. Oh, God. I loved being around them. I always had energy all the time. It was like it was fabulous, and I
Well,
didn't
and
mind.
I gotta point out you have outlived Ra as well
Oh yeah, yes, I have by quite a bit.
by quite a bit.
Yes, yeah, by I think 9 years. He died in 2016.
And he was younger than you.
Yeah, so yeah,
I'm
yeah,
keen to think that one of you, well, not to compare, but it sounds like you're using your energy just fine.
I think so. I'm happy with it. Do I ever crash and burn? Once in a great while. I don't care. Like you said, if you don't identify with it, you just let the experience happen. And when it's Timothy Leary had this great thing he said, grab hold tightly, let go lightly. Whatever comes your way, get into it. I mean, grab onto it. I remember when I was a kid, I spent all my summers in Arizona with my grandparents. And we went into it was a tiny town, population maybe 90. And we would go into a bigger little city down the road, population maybe a couple thousand. And it's in Wallapai Indian territory. And we walked by this Indian woman sitting on a step outside some building, and she had a peach in her hand. And my grandfather told me to watch her. He said, look how she eats a peach. She makes that peach last. She gets every bit of goodness out of it, every moment of enjoyment from it. She's not in a hurry to gobble it down. And I mean, good God, I heard those words, I don't know, more than 70 years ago, and I still remember them, and I still remember the image. It was a big thing to get that, and it got wired into me at a very young age. Okay, enjoy what's there. What's not there anymore, it's not there. you know, and I consider myself in some ways really lucky that I was as old as I was when I got into human design because I had pursued so many other systems and I had a lot of groundwork all prepared to take it on easily. On the other hand, I kind of regret that I wasn't younger because, geez, like I told you one time, you're going to be so amazing in your 50s. You are going to be so amazing. And you said, well, I'm amazing now. And I said, well, of course you are, but that's not the point. You're going to be so much more amazing
Tell me I got
because,
an ego, geez.
I mean, that's the way it works. the older you get, the more experience you have. And if you're one of the chosen, you get wisdom from your experience.
This is the greatest. I still like, I have so many questions and I'm loving, I really love how unpretentious this conversation is.
Oh, good.
Um,
I don't want to be pretentious. Ask me anything you want.
okay, so some of my questions are because I was so like, human design, I don't know what it is when I got into the beginning. And then it was very
Uh-huh.
like, no, this is real human design, and everybody else is learning dumb human design. So then I got really like obsessed with, like, I didn't stray from Ra. Ra was as interesting as I needed him to be, and there was so much content available. There wasn't any need to. But then, okay, so you used a phrase early adapter of human design. So a lot of the first students of Ra's have gone off to make variations of human design. They are either called regular human design or evolutionary or Zen or Jovian or quantum or whatever. But is it possible to just have human design from your perspective, or are there all of these like adaptations of it? And is like every person's interaction of it going to become an adaptation?
That's the way life works.
So, how do we know what is foundational enough to trust to innovate from there versus where is the foundation? Like, my questions with source, why I got so source based, was where was the actual foundation being eroded by things like trending social media posts? Um, like, where I want to play with it, but I want to play with the accurate foundational elements of it. So, some of this conversation came from me wanting to talk to someone who was more around at the beginning and be like, what are the foundational elements? Like, what actually can be trusted to be experimented with? And what was
The White
adapted?
Book is really good.
Which one? The White Book?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be honest. That's the White Book and Black Book always held a very different frequency to me in comparison to all the other information. But even if we're just like in the mode of like doer and waiter, and here are the sentence or not sentence, here are the centers, and here are your channels. But it was super limited. Like, are you a waiter, a doer? Here's your channel, here's your center, carry on.
I don't think he talked about, I'm trying to remember. He didn't talk much about the centers
Is that Black Book? That's probably Black
in the White Book.
Book.
The
Okay.
White Book was mostly about the gates.
Yeah, each end of the channel, the degrees, the sign it's in. And then he did a lot more of the explaining of like more of like his
Yes.
quantum theories.
I've got the White Book right up here somewhere.
Mine is disintegrating and hole punched.
Yeah, here we go. You know, he broke the contract he had with Zeno because she and Chaitanya didn't want to accept his whole trip about the types.
Yeah.
Uh, and why should they? I mean, he came out with this so much. I mean, supposedly he had the voice experience in 1987. Is that right?
Yep.
So 10 years later, he shows up and they thought he had revealed truth to them. And now he comes along with all this other stuff and they were pissed. And Chaitanya's never gotten past it. He
Yes.
really, really, really dislikes Ra.
Yes. I
Just not
had
to be cruel about it, but that's the way he feels.
That's one of
Uh,
the only things that I feel that I can affirm from uh like firsthand awareness is I've got to listen to a somewhat recent recounting of
mhm.
something from him, and the my primary takeaway after listening to him was, oh, he really does not like Raw. Like, really does not like Raw, and put up a lot of blocks against him after their falling out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's what's his cross? I think his cross is the general,
Mm.
if I remember correctly. Maybe I don't. I don't know. Anyway, he wasn't. He wasn't the at the time that I was taking the class. He wasn't teaching. he wasn't licensed to teach, and Zena was doing all the teaching, and she was she was a real animated person. I think she only had one channel, the 3955,
Oh.
and uh, I don't know. It's been so long. I mean, that's 25, 26 years ago. I said something about it one time. He got really pissed at me because he said, "No, you got it wrong." Well, shit. I'm not trying to present historical fact here. I'm just saying, here's what I remember. Uh, the answer to your question is, how can you know? You can't. That's why he would say experiment. I mean, he was smart enough to know that he didn't look. You sit down and you write a lot of stuff. It's based on your experience. And you can't, one of the things that really, really I spent so much time thinking about all this stuff. You have no idea, because 1762, here we go. And I'm still doing it to this very day. Um, there's so much that you have to struggle. You do. You have to struggle if you're going to get any real benefit from something. And he would say, experiment, experiment, experiment. It bothered me a lot that he has no idea what it's like to be a projector.
I
Not
definitely
really.
can tell that.
Not really. I mean, yeah, he's got a lot of thoughts. That's very different than experience. He never could experience being a generator. He could never experience being a projector or reflector. He had no way of doing it. His body was in the way of him
Mm.
ever experiencing that. By his standards, with the
Mhm.
manifestor thing and all this stuff. Is that stuff useful? I think I'm very pragmatic. I don't care if stuff's true or not.
Mm.
I don't have belief systems. I just have, working theories. And as long as it works, okay, I'm happy with that. It works. I like the profiles. I think the profile stuff is very good. I don't know what it's like to have any kind of authority other than the one I have.
Mm.
And I don't know, when Shaitan gave me my first good reading, he didn't call it authority. He just said something about, the way you make decisions is you don't really know how you make decisions. You don't really know. You just decide. Afterwards, you might think about it and say, well, I decided it for this reason, but that's not really why you decided it. You just knew. He didn't say anything about being self-projected or any of that. And it was such an easy way to take that in because it's true. I don't know. I certainly don't need to go talk with people. I just hated that idea. I'm not going to put no thanks. Well, for one thing, most people won't listen. You
True.
know, unless you're talking about them, they don't listen. So I said, okay, that's fine. I
Okay,
don't.
this is.
Let's see. You have splenic authority.
Mhm.
I don't know if I get that or not. I have a completely open spleen. I think maybe I do, but again, it's a thinking thing. I've had some outrageous experiences with my. I guess my spleen was turned on. I don't know. The spleen
Oh.
only says no. It can't say yes.
I tell people this all the time, and they manage like so again, like with my pop HD thing. If I see people where like, oh, my spleen responded yes, and I'm like, okay, are we
Yeah.
sure that we even know what center we're talking about? Because my spleen has never said yes to me. I tell
Yeah.
people if you don't hear no, proceed. Like carry on, carry on, carry on until your body goes, until you get this
Yeah.
freak the fuck out panic that says, I'm going to die, or this is going to hurt,
Hmm.
or I need to spit that out, or run the other way, or pivot now, but this is like a spontaneous directional push you out of the way of the train, right? Like
Uh-huh.
it's going to save your life or leave you alone.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I went out. It's interesting for me being a completely open spleen. I have splenic adventures if I'm around somebody that has this defined spleen. So one time I was with this friend, I've known her for years, and she has the 2838 channel, and she's got, I think, the 1648 maybe. She's a manifester from the root.
Mm-hmm.
So we were out kind of in nature, sort of shores environment, nature up against a college campus. And we're walking along, and there were a bunch of big, tall eucalyptus trees, and some storm had come through, and a bunch of branches had fallen, and it had bright red sap. And she said, "Oh my God, the trees are bleeding." I trusted her. So I'm totally open to everything she says. Oh, wow, look at that. And yeah, they've been wounded. Oh, okay. I don't see the world that way, but that's pretty cool. So we walk on a little bit further. And you know what a trapdoor spider is?
No.
Okay, it's this really cool little spider guy. He gets like a little cave in the earth,
Okay.
and he constructs this little trap door. He takes some earth and he holds it together with his thread, and he makes a little hinge and he puts it on top of that hole, and it's very, very light. It'll fall down easily. So if some insect happens to walk across that little trap door, it'll fall down, and the bug will fall down into his little cave and he'll eat it. Pretty cool, right?
It takes me back to the nature of the hole is that it wants to be filled.
Yeah, right. It gets filled, and so does his hole, his gaping maw. So I'm getting down on the ground like this, and I'm just staring at it. I'm looking at it. And man says, "No, you shouldn't do that. That's not your territory." And I go, "Oh, well, okay." Apparently she had a no, I guess. I don't know. She had it for me. So we're driving home, and there's a hawk circling up in the sky. And I see the hawk. I'm going, "Oh, cool. All right. So there's some good fortune for me." I got home when I was sick for 3 days. I guess I'm looking in that trapdoor spider's hole. I don't know. Or maybe from being around all those bleeding trees. I just don't approach nature that way. I don't have any fear of nature on my own. None.
You know, it's funny though, because like the way that she described things is also like I probably would have said all of the same things. And I know that from one perspective, it might have been like fear or dark or death, like the bleeding trees and the damage and the territory and stuff. But also, being splenic makes me I feel very like animalistic, primitive, gross. And gross is just a word that other people would use to describe things that I think are like normal and interesting. So like I find body fluids fascinating most of the time, whereas other people would describe them as gross. And so like blood is a body fluid to me, whereas it
Mm,
might put other people off. To me, it's like an indication of the health of life. And so
mm.
like to see redness and to see blood, like I see so much life around me. And I made a comment to my partner the other day. I said, whether it's a raw steak or a glass of orange juice, I need to taste the life. Um, like I
See,
need,
if I had walked through that area by myself, I wouldn't have seen that red sap as blood.
do you know
I
what
would have
you
said,
would have
"Oh, look
seen?
how beautiful that is."
Oh, it's nice paint, nature's paint.
Yeah, something, I mean, wow, oh, look, the branch broke off and fell home. Too bad for you. But the tree's okay. That limb is not going to make it. And I was fascinated. I'd never been so close to a trapdoor spider's abode before. It was fascinating. It was so cool looking. And how he constructed it and everything. I had no fear of that.
Very
Like I,
objective.
I don't, the only place I get fearful is in the ocean.
Oh, I feel that. Oh my God, no.
There's too much unseen. There's too much that, I'm not good in the ocean. I'm not a strong enough swimmer to be really comfortable out there.
No, if you can touch my toes, I'm freaking out.
I gotta have my feet on the ground.
What? Yeah, I just so as a little kid going fishing with my family, I was always afraid to paint my toenails because I thought that like they look just like the fishing lures we're using. How can I go swimming and kick something around that looks like a lure and have that fish be like, "Oh no, I'm good." So that to me was just silly.
That reminds me, we went to visit friends in Kauai some years back when my younger son, was maybe 8, 9, 10, somewhere around in that age. And there's this place you can go swimming where it's really calm, and there are a whole bunch of fish that come because there's a little channel that comes in from the ocean into this small. It's not big enough to be called a lagoon, but it's very safe. Kids can go in there, and you can't get swept out to sea. No waves or anything. A lot of fish, and so we bought some fish food, and we're in there, and we're spreading the fish food out, and so we're surrounded by fishes. My son freaked out because they were nibbling at him.
Oh,
They didn't know. I mean, here's food. Oh, wow. And he had the little food bag in his hand, and they just were all around him and trying to get the food. And he freaked out, had to go in. It's so, you ever think about, you can't remember what was going on when you were growing up. You can't, no, you can't remember what was going on inside of your head, inside of your body. You can't really remember much of that.
yeah.
And so that's another 1762 project where I spent 2 years writing about that sort of thing because it's God, you have to do so much in your brain. You have to do so much. The images that come in, they're upside down. You got to figure out how to flip them right side up. And that's all through trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. Uh, you, you don't know anything about that world you just suddenly were ejected into. You don't even know. You don't have a classification system. Oh, this is hot. This is cold. Oh, I feel pain. Oh, I feel good. You have none of that. Absolutely nothing. And all this stuff is going on. And you tell me that you're not getting madly conditioned. Of course you are. Of course you are. And
Honestly, when you say profile really speaks to you, I'm like, I know I relate so much to being a third line because of how I learn about the world. If someone says don't touch an oven, it's hot, I'm like, what is hot and how hot and what will it do to me? So I touch it.
yeah, right. I have a lot of that experience as a 4-6. First 30 years as a third line. And God, I didn't care.
Yeah.
I just did. And that was that whole upheaval that was going on. And I tried everything.
Okay, I have three
Okay.
specific questions
Yeah.
and
I got
like
plenty of time.
they might get a little bit tangential and other things come up in between, but the first one is, do you think that the voice happened the way that Rod described it, or do you have a different interpretation of what the voice is?
Sure. He was stoned in acid.
And talking
And
to
he was
himself?
watching. Listen, when you're stoned in acid, you can literally watch the mechanics of the brain at work. I'm not kidding. You can see it
I've only
vividly.
done acid once, and it was a wonderful experience. But I've only done it once, so I don't have a
Ah,
lot of comparison.
yeah, no, it's I did it quite a bit. I really enjoyed it. I had a couple of not so pleasant experiences, but that's just life, Shit happens. My favorite hippie expression. Shit happens.
Okay, did you ever see the movie The Dark Crystal by Jim Henson?
Oh, sure.
You
God,
are the
wasn't that cool?
Okay, you're the first person who has said yes to that question, which in itself is mind-blowing. But
Yeah.
do you think it's interesting that there were so many of the terms that would become popular in human design in there? In particular, like how there was what would Jen, short for generator, is waiting outside the fucking door, and there's a light under the door, and then he opens the door and there's the woman with the old smoker voice, and she's got her machine with the mechanics of the fucking Maya in it.
I forgot all
So
about that. I haven't seen it in so long.
Well, it came out in 1987, so
Oh, that was the year I moved back from Hawaii.
and apparently it's the year Ra got the transmission, and it sounds just like the audio in that video that came out that year.
Wow. Yeah, you know, the thing is that all of this stuff is built into us. If you get interested in evolution,
Yeah.
all of the stuff in the arrows, the variables, inner and outer, that's all from evolution. All of
Mhm.
it. Caves. There was this little creature, Purgatorius, one of the few mammals, a primate mammal, that survived that catastrophic event from 65 million years ago. And we're all descended from that creature. And it was able to survive. It was only about the size of a large squirrel. Imagine being a large squirrel in a world of dinosaurs. So this little creature, he was pretty fucking good at avoiding being stepped on. After everything, all the plants on the planet burned out, and so all of the plant eaters, the really big meaty dinosaurs, died. No plants, and eventually, then all of the predators died too because they had eaten all the plant eaters. And then it became a nuclear winter. It had been a tropical planet, and it all of a sudden there was snow and ice. And so many, what didn't die from the burning up and starvation died from the cold. They didn't have fur. They were not equipped to deal with it. This little creature burrowed. It could get under. It's like being in an igloo. You're underground with the insulation of the soil and the snow on top of it, and you stick your nose out. And that's the whole basis of caves. It's in our DNA. 65 million years it's been in our DNA.
I love this because like I always explain environment through evolution, but I don't start with the little tiny mammal. I start with like I genuinely start the story with humans, but I talk about like humans in their cave environment. And I always say you start with the cave, but if it's only you in your cave family, you get to a point where it's not a good idea to keep procreating from your limited selection. So then we go to markets and you swap sugar with a neighbor or a daughter, and we
All
expand
right.
the genetic line.
I didn't know you taught it that way. That's great. It really is. I mean, because that's
Oh, yeah.
exactly what's happening. It's our
I t-
DNA is running this, and we're evolving.
okay. So if if this is in all of us, it's a bold question and a big question, but what is source? And it's ultimately the question of this entire season on my podcast, exploring source, because the pop HD thing and that created the whole like source human design. And then I got known for being so source based. And I realized there was a difference between source based and raw based. And I went through a little bit of a shattering a couple of months ago. And ultimately, it happened because I was giving a session to a projector and they had a moment of like exasperation. And they said, everyone recognizes you. They know you do human design. What do I do? And when she said to me, everyone knows you do human design, I freaked out. I was like, what do you mean everyone knows I do human design? She's like, why aren't you happy about that? I said, I don't want to be seen as someone who does human design. I read people. Human design is just the thing that lets you believe what I have to tell you. And that was a really big deal for me to realize. Like, I've
Ah,
been reading people my whole life, but this map with the body graph is a good thing to put between me and a client to get them to understand where my information is coming from. But it's not coming from reading a chart. Like, I genuinely feel that I read people energetically, and I think that's what projectors do. Like, we're very good at reading people, but they want to know how we understand them. They don't necessarily believe that we can see them and penetrate them and like recognize them. And so when we have human design, I'm like, this map gives me like a legend to be able to tell you this information about you. But my greatest work doesn't necessarily require me to have access to a body graph. It requires me to see the person in front of me.
Well, if you're doing a reading over the phone or like this in a Zoom call, you can't. I mean, you can a little bit, but you're not getting their aura. Well, I don't know. Maybe you are a little bit from their voice. It's hard to know.
I do need to be able to look at people to see them. Like, I need to actually look at them. Like, when I do different, deeper energetic body work with people, I just stare at them. Like, I stare at them for like 10, 15 minutes straight and kind of just hyper focus on them. And so much
Oh,
information ends up coming up for me. And then I talk to them about it. And, you know, it's interesting. I feel like I had these gifts before finding human design. Then I found human design. And it's kind of leading me back to the understanding of how the gifts work, but it's ultimately just taking me back to the gift in the first place. And that gift comes with a question of what is source? Where does this information come from? What is its purpose? How is it most beneficial? How do I do my best job with this?
you're funny. You only have one channel, right? 2644?
Yep.
And 44 is a smell. So I always wondered why you chose taste, as you say, I spit it out. And instead of
Well,
saying, oh, this stinks.
well, it's funny, right? Because like that gate will say smell, like the smell for the past repeating itself, my instinctual alertness, but then my cognition is second tone. Either way, smell and taste will both be splenic binary. So the cognition and discernment is still very splenic, very literal. And this might sound really gross, but I always have a want to lick people.
You have what?
I want to lick people.
Lick people.
Yeah. Like
Oh, that's cool.
I always think if I can lick someone's index finger, I'm gonna know like everything about them, which
Here,
is
lick.
so gross. Like that's
Oh,
so
darn, you
gross.
can't reach it.
People don't want me to do that, right? And people don't want me to do that to their partners and stuff for sure.
I
Smelling
wouldn't
people is
mind.
smelling people is usually enough, but like yeah, taste is so important to me. If I don't want to breathe someone, I shouldn't be near them at all.
Lisa's cognition is smell.
Oh yeah.
Mine is touch.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand that. What do you mean, touch? I don't get any big thrill out of touching stuff. I don't really like touch things much. And then one
Well,
day I realized I have been seeing masseuses and chiropractors ever since I was in my 20s on a regular basis. I love to be touched the right way.
ooh,
I really, really, I really like it. And I don't even care if it hurts. Quite often, pain is the right thing to experience, in terms of how I'm being touched.
mm-hmm.
I lived most of my life cut off from my body in some ways. I mean, I don't have anything in my body. There's no definition there at all. Most of it's completely empty. I think I have two gates in the emotional
Two in
center.
yeah, and two in the root.
Right, right, right. So, not much. And it's funny because that, in a sense, keeps my conditioning pretty pure. I don't
Yeah.
get I don't get lit up by somebody who comes along with just one gate to match mine. There's not enough of them to need for that to happen very often. So I get more of a full experience of something, I guess. I don't know. I don't like to be around people too much, and I don't like to be around crowds of people very much at all. And when I go to a party or something, I put up my defenses by talking and laughing and joking because God, it's just so hard to have to experience all this shit.
Okay, I'm a little bit intrigued about like, the rave, the party people. I've been to a human design conference and it was a little more party than I was looking for sure. I don't party. And I think in general as a projector, like we tend to be a little bit more intellectual in our socializing. Um, Techno dance music is not how I want to hang out with people. Give me a bottle of wine and a table full of good food. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little more down tempo, a little more study break, you know.
Yeah.
And so I wonder with Raw being so social or party based or whatever, like they're in general, that's how I see so much misunderstanding for the projector. Like we wouldn't have fit those crowds. We're not going to those events. Like how often did he even get to meet true self projectors? How often
I
did he
know.
meet regulated projectors?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, he's around a lot of people, and I'm sure that they shared information about themselves with him, which he took in. I think he quit taking big doses of LSD, I think, and started microdosing. I hated microdoses. I didn't want to be a little bit stoned. That's very distracting. You know, it's all or nothing.
Oh, that's so intriguing. Okay, I want to make sure I heard you correctly on something you said earlier, but when you're talking about the lower prices that you were doing for your readings, and then you said like you never made like a much, you didn't make like a big career out of your readings. Have you ever had human design be your career?
Well, it is now. I mean, I make some money from it now, but as a career, human design has been my life. So it's hard to say, you know, did I go to a 9 to 5 job where I got paid for human design? No, I never had that as a career. I have been teaching for a good part of my life. Back in my late 20s, I started teaching acting. Acting is a fabulous thing, not for going in and acting a role, but the exercises that you get to do when you're learning about acting are just marvelous ways to connect really cleanly with another person, with their aura, very deeply and very cleanly. So you would do things like, it's one of the exercises is called mirroring. So two people stand in front of each other, and you say to one person, okay, just do something on your face, put on makeup or shave or whatever. And the other person is going to, as much as they can, imitate your movement while you're moving. They're not going to remember how you move. They're going to try and be present with you. So if I move my hand like this and you see me doing this, then you're going to try and move your hand. So I have to slow down in order for you to be able to do that, because it's not something we're accustomed to doing, which makes me be more aware of what I'm doing, of what my body's doing. And then we swap roles and I have to mirror the other person. And it's just it's really cool. You know, you get to experience somebody. It's a very non-threatening thing. Nothing bad is going to happen from that, you know. Nobody's going to say, "Oh, you're so hot, I want to go to bed with you," or "You're ugly, I don't want anything to do." None of that's going to happen because you're. It's an acting technique. You're not doing it with some kind of hidden agenda.
Mhm.
And so there's a bunch of others, and I taught it to Mo. I am a ladies' man, meaning I prefer the company of women, much preferred, which is odd because my mother was just an absolute horrible, cruel, mean, and nasty person. And yet I prefer the company of women. Men are boring to me. You know, they're just boring. Could never have this conversation with a man. I couldn't. Maybe you could, but I couldn't.
I was just gonna say, while I'm tempted to agree with you, I've been having so many more of these conversations with men recently, and the majority of guests on this season of my podcast are they're all projector men. There's a
Oh,
ton of
wow,
projector
cool.
men on this season, um, which I think is amazing because I would like to see them have a little bit more
Yeah,
voice,
yeah,
honestly, and
yeah.
some fresher projector male voices as well.
Male to male, it's always this competition thing. Always.
Yeah.
It never stops.
Yeah. I feel a little bit of that with my ego, but I also feel that in general, just like I feel like people just want to compete with me consistently. I
Do
get
what?
treated like a man a lot. Um,
Oh, that's odd.
yeah, and in particular by some of my partners, which is weird.
I don't know any men as pretty as you.
Well, thank you, Kim. Um, you have said so many incredible things. Like, and the answers to my questions were so good. This was so fun and light and entertaining.
Oh, good. That's I love to do sessions because this is how I do them. It's my kind of conversational.
Yeah, I
And,
really, really
and,
like
and
this.
I like to throw out what I could think of as little signposts. I have a specific way of teaching. I want to put little markers in your brain,
Hmm.
and then your brain is going to do whatever it wants to do with the little markers I put there. I don't want you to be like me. I want to put
Hmm.
that little thing out there that's general enough that you can put it into the tapestry that you're constantly weaving. That's you, and it becomes you. It's your flavor to it. It's your aura that works with it. It's everything about you just takes that and does whatever it wants to do with it. I don't want to tell anybody what to do.
I love this. Okay, well, in the vein of not telling anyone what to do, what do you think is actually the information people should pay attention to in human design? What's worth
I
experimenting?
think profile is important. I
Yeah.
really do, because you can see it kind of, and when you look at a chart, you're seeing something that's three dimensional on a two-dimensional surface. You're not really seeing it's three-dimensional. All this stuff is coming in from, you know, you're a cube or a sphere, and all this stuff comes in, and inside your body, it's the same way. I want to talk about the, what do you call it, the neutrinos for a minute.
Okay.
Ra insists that they affect you. At least he had an answer. Astrology couldn't tell you anything about why. He had nothing. So I liked that. But as I thought more about it, I went, well, wait a second. So what's actually going on here? Well, he didn't say. He never said. Well, the neutrinos go into you and they pass through you, and a little bit of it, the red car, white car story, right?
Hmm.
That's about as deep as he got in it. But it's actually when you're, well, you got conscious and unconscious, not subconscious, unconscious. And when you're in the womb and these trillions of neutrinos per second per square inch are going through you as a fetus, you're pretty damn small. Your brain is pretty damn small. And there's this what's called the neural substrate, the foundation neural substrate. And the neutrinos are having an effect on it. And maybe it's just an effect of giving a little more energy to someplace, or giving it, however you get your well, we know you get it's interacting with your DNA and building your specific, unique neural substrate. The two of them are they're not collaborating. But yeah, they are. They're collaborating, but I don't think they're collaborating consciously. They're just doing it. And you use all of that information then to keep growing yourself. You know what your self narrative is, right? Who you think you are, who you tell yourself you are, all that stuff. And it's true. In many respects, that is who you are. Of course, your other things as well. But when I think about profile, you ever see a picture of what we call centers, neuroscientists call hubs. Okay, so you can look up neural hubs. You can see a picture of them. They have all these little branches coming off. They're all little nerve things for behavior chains, and some of them are pretty big. And it occurred to me that things like your strategy and your profile and your authority, they're bigger. They're channels. They're bigger. They carry a lot more information. They're broadband. And then you have all these little, as you get down, well, now you got the energy of gates, and it's bigger than some. Then you got all these little filaments going everywhere. One of the things I learned when I had the Rolfing people working on me, the ones that work with your connective tissue, one of them was working on my mouth and inside my mouth. Ooh, talk about pain. How she asked me when she was done, so just came out of the blue. She said, "So what would you say to your mother if she were here right now?" And my mouth just went, "Fuck you." Just boom. And I realized, Jesus, so much of what I say has nothing to do with my mind. It's all this muscle memory of things I've said before, all the memory of how I vocalize. It's all built into the muscles. And you see people that have these really tight mouths, and they talk like this,
Yep.
built into the muscles. Other people, they really open their mouths when they talk. Everything is so great. Singers are good at that. So singers are good with their mouths not closed too. I mean, it's incredible. So many muscles it takes to make a word, and so many things have to happen in your throat and in your air tubes, airways, for a sound to come out, let alone an organized sound that somebody else will understand, let alone a whole stream of them like we're doing. We are understanding each other. Isn't that fucking phenomenal?
Mhm.
And it's nothing to do with who we are, except it's everything to do with who the body is.
Okay, just that alone gave me 3 different other questions I'm
Sure,
curious
go
about.
for it.
Okay, one, the organized sound. There's an amazing podcast. It's like the most popular podcast in the world called the Telepathy Tapes.
Called what?
The Telepathy Tapes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it is amazing, but it's about nonverbal autistic people who communicate telepathically with either their caregivers, their parents, ultimately someone who believes that they can. And this is an evolution from like a supported, so people who were nonverbal could like point to letters, but a lot of the times they couldn't point because their muscle control was off. And when they were able to express why the muscle control was off through telepathy, eventually what they were saying was like they didn't know where their arm was in space. Like, I don't know where my arm is. So when their caregiver would touch their elbow, it would indicate to them where their arm was in space. And from there, they could point forward and touch the
Oh, that's
letters.
cool.
And that evolved so many other things to a point of understanding that there's a huge collection of nonverbal autistic people who communicate telepathically, and they even have like a place for it. It's called the Hill. So there's like an energetic place where they meet each other and communicate non-verbally. And a lot of what they express is um they don't even have the want to become verbal because the way that they communicate with each other is energetically so efficient, whereas to make all of the muscles, to make the mouth, to make the sound to be understood is so much effort, and by the time it comes out it's usually like judged or seen as inferior or whatever, like seen as problematic or disabled or whatever. And so for them, there's a preference for people to learn telepathic communication. And a lot of the time, the caregiver is the first one that realizes because they sense what the person needs. Then they start to think, like, hold on, am I actually sensing this to some extent? So they start to explore. And then it might be like, I need to know if you can tell what I'm thinking. I'm going to write down a number over here. I want you to point out on your screen what this number is. And they run all of these different kinds of tests. And these kids are getting them right like 999 out of 1,000 times.
Wow.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And so it really started to push me in this direction of what are our actual sensory gifts? What is the rave? Is the rave already here? Are the rave qualities already here? Has there been a gross misinterpretation of what the hold on, I'm going to cough and clear my voice. Squeeze me, I'm getting all fired up. When Ra talks about the rave, I'd never say what is true in the future. I'm not there. So this is all speculation no matter what. So when Ra speculates what the raves will be like in the future, and then you listen to these telepathy tapes, and then you think about like, they don't eat the same, they'll be nonverbal, they won't, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, but Ra kind of created this story of like these deformed, institutionalized, scary control beings. Whereas it's actually more like extremely aware, extremely perceptive, able to communicate non-verbally through belief and energetics that we can. And it's not just like being fascinated by this. I have my own experience of this. So I really do believe that I read people at a certain level. I'm assuming it's because I'm a projector. I think that my specific channel gives me some like framework around how I read people. So the fact that I'm splenic and my channel is immune based, I always get health signals from people. I get physical sensations. So when that person was working on your mouth and your mouth was really painful and then they said, "What would you say to your mom?" That's exactly the kind of stuff that I do with people. Like I get a pain thing, it translates to an energetic message which comes with for a question for the person that I'm working with, and that question is usually very not what they think they're there to talk to me about. It's usually quite emotional, quite deep, quite like it brings something up to the surface. I think that we have these like greater extra sensory gifts. I think human design is part of how we figure out how to access or use them, but I still don't know like how much of this is being a projector, how much of this is my spleen, how much of this is my innocence motivation, and is innocence motivation a thing? And are we also just some of like people are sensory aware and some of us have gifts and some of us are sensitive enough to use them? Or
Well, everybody's using their gifts in one way or another. I don't really know. I don't have a really good explanation why so many people are so badly behaved. I don't know. I just don't. God, I look at human behavior, sex trafficking and murder and rape and pillage and plunder and all this shit. And is that in their rave chart? No. There's nothing in the rave chart about that sort of stuff because those are, I would say that, here's the thing, they've been around for so long. That means they're successful behaviors. They breed, they reproduce, they continue on. So nature considers them useful still. Oh, how disheartening. you know. ah, and then the it's interesting. There's this woman named Mary Douglas. I got to spend some time with her online. She is the one that came up with the whole thing about the what Ra calls the circuits. Uh, she's a cultural anthropologist, probably the most. She was considered the most famous anthropologist in Britain, and until she died. An amazing woman, small woman, who actually did field work in primitive parts of Africa. Can you imagine yourself doing that?
no.
I can't see myself doing it either. And a very calm person, and brilliant. God, she was smart. One of the things that she observed about people is that we have to have somebody to blame. When something goes awry, we have to have somebody to blame. And there's only a very small cast. You can blame the victim. you know, you weren't good enough. You didn't hang out with the right people. You're an alcoholic. Whatever. It's your fault. That the wall fell over on you and broke your legs. Wow. Okay. Or you can blame somebody else. Typically, somebody who you contend with for power. So in primitive tribes, that would be like the shaman, the witch doctor. They've got power, and you might be, maybe they're trying to put a voodoo hex spell on you and you're fighting with them. And so that would be somebody that you would blame. And they do that. You go in and live in these primitive tribes and they do exactly that behavior. They blame somebody, the chief or the shaman or whoever has got more power. We do that with the government. Think of the number of people that bitch about the government. They're always fighting the government, always fighting the government. No, we got to go out and kill people. You got to let us run wild and do whatever we want. And the government's, no, you can't do that, or unless you're Trump, and say, okay, go ahead and do it, but do it to those guys, not to us. It's just, I don't know. India has a fascinating written history about this sort of thing, about what do they call them, the yugas?
Mm-hmm.
I've had a few students that were from India, and so I got a chance to learn more and more about it. I guess ours isn't ending anytime soon, although we're at the tail end of it. It's a time of mistrust. We're in a yuga that has to do with distrust, where people are deceitful. And they say it's part of this giant balancing of, quote, good between evil. And what does good mean? I don't know. I got my own ideas about it, but other people don't necessarily share them. And same with evil. I don't think it's evil to have sex with somebody who's the same sex gender as you are. I don't see it that way, but other people do. And we're so, this has to be correct. And in other words, it's been around for so long that I don't think you can draw a line and say that this is deviant behavior. It works. So it's clearly useful behavior to the species. Species doesn't give a shit about individuals. Ra and all this talk about unique individuation. No, the, the program is not interested in that. Doesn't have any interest in it at all. When Ra talks about getting out of that, it's the same thing as the Buddhists saying how you break away from the wheel. Be aware, conscious.
I'm kind of giggling a little bit over here because with Ra, like when you said it's not my fault, it's your fault. You can either blame the victim or you can blame the person that you're competing for power with. Ra really went in the direction of like it's the individual's responsibility, which would definitely align more with the blame the victim, as in the like we each have individual authority and autonomy, and basically like our negative consequences are kind of our fault of operating incorrectly, which is interesting because Ra's a 5-1 profile. So if anybody is going to be like burned at the stake, it's Ra. So if anybody's going to be burned for their power, it's Ra. So I'm laughing a little bit that Ra being the 5 is like, it's not my fault. It's your fault. You're responsible.
Oh, good catch. Yeah. Yeah. It's also, like you say, well, faulty. But you don't know what the future holds. This is the problem.
We
You
don't.
can't say, okay, I go do something, I get hit in the head. Oh, I did the wrong thing. Well, I don't know that I did the wrong thing. I know I got hit in the head for it, but what is the result of there's a famous teaching story. I think it's not Sufis, it's, well, maybe it is Sufi, where a series of accidents happen to
Is it
this
the maybe
person.
story?
Huh?
Is it the maybe story? Maybe.
Yes, yeah. Where the guy breaks his leg, the son breaks his leg, and the dad goes. Everybody goes, "That's terrible." And, oh, no, maybe. And then the troops come to take all the young men away who can fight.
I've
And it
totally
goes
heard
on and
this.
on.
Kip, this is
Yeah.
wild. I was just going to bring this up to you.
Oh, yeah. See, we have no way of knowing. We do our best.
Maybe.
I have part of the 10-20 is a commitment to higher principle.
Mm-hmm.
And I am that way. And I can do anything I want as long as I don't do something I know I shouldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that works out. That's part of that self-projected authority. Because my self is never going to want to do something bad.
I love this. Okay, so curiously, if people are trying to like actually live according to their mechanics, it seems that you would be inclined to tell them worry more about these ones and don't really care about these ones, and in general don't really care about any of it.
It all comes down to this: trust yourself. Put absolute faith and trust in it's easy for me to say, being self-projected, I guess, but I think it's true for everybody. You gotta be you. If you're an asshole, you're an asshole.
Okay, how do you feel about this as a general piece of advice for life? If it feels good, keep going. If it doesn't feel good, stop.
I think in general, I think that's good. I think that works.
Cool.
Because you don't know what effect you have on others. I'm always telling people this. Like they say to the projectors, you can only talk when you're invited. Fuck you. I want to talk when I want to talk. If
Thank
somebody
you.
doesn't hear what I
Agreed.
say, I don't care.
They're welcome to leave. They got 2 feet in a heartbeat.
You know. And I make a point of drumming this kind of stuff home to the projectors. Don't get caught up in that. That is just talk about. Could there be a more disempowering bit of advice than wait till you're recognized before you say or do anything?
Yeah. I cannot live that way. And I say to my projector clients, like, this may be controversial advice, but it's the way that I live my life. Do whatever the fuck you want, but don't interfere in someone else's life until they've given you clear sign that they'd like you to. Like, if I want to go for lunch, I go for lunch. If I want to buy something, I buy something. If I want to go on a vacation, I do. But I don't go to the store, look at someone, debate over 2 books to buy, walk up to them and say, hey, you need to read this one, because I don't need to insert myself in their life. But if I'm
Right,
looking at
right.
these books and they look at me and they go, hey, have you read one of them? I go, yeah, this one, it's amazing, you should get it. Right? They're going to receive that a lot better. I just say, honestly, I stay in my lane, I mind my own business, I do whatever the fuck I want to do, and if I have to interfere with someone else, I make sure that they want
See, I don't mind interfering.
it.
Look, I mean, if you get the gestalt of who I am, one of the things I'm here for is to be a scout. I
Mm.
go out. I've been doing this my whole life. I go out and I get all this information, this stuff that people don't know, and I come back to wherever my little hometown space is, and I share it, and I tell people about it. And if they don't dig it, I don't come back. I'm not gonna try and convert them, but I share because that's part of what the 731 channel is about. The channel of leadership is sharing. But I do it nicely. I don't tell them they should. But if I'm standing by somebody and they're looking at a book and I say, "Oh, that was a really good book. I read that. I liked it a lot." I'm not telling them what they should do. I'm just saying, well, I
This
liked
is
it.
my opinion on it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And it used to bother me that people wouldn't listen to me because so many people are so fucked up. And I knew I could set them right, but then they couldn't get it.
Yeah.
Even when they asked me, when I lived in Hawaii, group of people, hippies, nobody had a TV. We didn't have electricity. Uh, it was a very different lifestyle. And so we would gather. Our entertainment was to sit around a big round table with a bunch of friends and just, well, usually drink whiskey and took cocaine and talk and sing. That was it. That was the whole, that was the fun thing to do. And there was this one couple that they started telling us about their problems and asking what they should do. And so I would tell them. And the next time that we'd get together, they'd tell us the same shit.
And you're like, I don't want to have this conversation anymore.
That's right. That's exactly what I said. Hey, I told you what to do. You didn't do it. So what, I don't need to hear it again. I don't care.
Kip,
That's a very important tool.
you're very
Learning how
empowering.
to let other people be who they are.
Yeah. And also, like, I love this, but I like to let people experience their consequences. And
Sure.
people have a hard time hearing that from me, but I like innocent, 6 line, you name it. But like, your life is your business. I don't need to get into your life and tell you how to live it. I got my own life to take care of. Like, I don't like interfering. I dropped out of becoming a social worker in the last year because I'm like, I genuinely don't have the compassion required for this job. I'm like, if you like your pipe, keep it. If you don't like your pipe, put it down, like I'm a big autonomy person. And I think that we all have our own energetic consequences to suffer. And I mean, I do take this into the money stuff a little bit when people message me and they're like, hey, I can't afford to work with you. Will you give me a session for free? My reaction is like, your financial situation is your consequence, not mine. I'm not going to let your financial situation become my consequence.
Good. Good. Yeah. 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 I make myself very accessible to people, but I want to be paid for my work. I
Mm.
mean, I've got 25 years invested in it. Of course, I want to be paid. It's funny that you said that about social work. I did the exact same thing. I was going to be a psychologist. I'd
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be a psychologist for years. It wasn't really my desire, but I didn't know that it wasn't. So I'm part of in California, if you wanted to be a psychologist, you had to have yay so many hours of psychotherapy. Well, I happened to know a man who was a psychologist who happened to sit on the board that licensed psychologists. So I knew he was really good. And he was a casual acquaintance. So I was sitting in his ante room one day, waiting for my turn to go in, and some guy in his looked like I was maybe early 30s, no, late 20s, very late 20s. And I'd gotten away from the third line finally. So some guy comes out of his waiting room and he's crying. And it blew me away. And I had to look at myself and go, fuck, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to. Some 40-year-old guy needs a place to cry and he comes and pays me money so he can have somewhere to cry. Whoa, God, that's a heavy duty job. I'm not, ah, just like you, I'm not compassionate enough. I can't do this. I don't care that much about people. I mean, that's the truth. Doesn't sound
Well,
good.
I just don't understand why we were ever expected to care about everyone. Like, it's not like I want everyone to die or anything like that. I just, like, global awareness isn't supposed to be a thing. I'm not supposed to have the capacity to be sad about everyone else's sadness.
Right. No, you can't. And yet there are people who are supposed to be
All those collective people.
that. Well, no, but I mean, really, it takes, here's what evolution wants. It wants the species to succeed. And in order to succeed, you have to interact with all aspects of what life itself brings you. And so you have people that are really caregivers.
Mhm.
They really are caregivers. That's their thing. That's what they want to do. And some people are bleeding heart liberals, and some people are these horrible, I want a king to tell me what to do and who muster up the troops and go kill anybody that doesn't follow his orders. And when you said something about pop psychology, and I realized kind of early that for every voice, there's an ear.
Mm.
There's all these people talking about this human design light.
Mhm.
That's kind of how I think of it. Uh, they're going to get something out of it. They're not ready
Mhm.
for me. They're not ready for you.
Human design light.
Right. I mean, they're just not there yet. Thank God they've got somebody that can say something that they can hear.
That's true because whenever I was critical of the overly l- light and sugary content, even the people that came to me and were like, no, I'm really into this. However, at the point I was at in my life when I found human design, like I needed the gentle nudge. So there are certain accounts where it's like a nice, like, here, welcome to human. And some people needed that. Like
Mhm.
a lot of people needed the sacral approach. They need the warm, open, enveloping, big hug. A lot of people, honestly, I will give her credit for this. Karen Curry attracts a lot of people because of her like soft, feminine approach to so much of the language. A lot of people move beyond her very quickly, but she does capture a lot of people with the type of language she uses. Same with Jenna Zoe. There's a lot of softness that will pull people in, but then they're like, okay, hold on, I need something I can bite into. Hmm. All right.
Looks like your wheels were spinning there and you were having some deep thoughts.
Well, I'm just always kind of back and forth between how I feel about all the different directions. And at the end of the day, I have to consider the fact that most of the times I'm turned off of information, it's just on Instagram. And I gotta be mindful of how much I think it's the person versus how much I think it's the application and the application trying to coach or encourage people to create content a certain way to perform for an algorithm. And I don't know how much the algorithm is the problem and not the people.
Oh, the money's the thing. If you don't pay enough, our growth had been pretty steady in terms of followers. I think I'm close to 8,000 people now, and we don't do anything to try and get followers. Nothing at all. I mean, I put my content up there. I tell people, I share stuff about myself and I share stuff about human design, but I don't do we intros. Oh, look at me, I'm this, that, and the other thing. And I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
It's pale. There's no substance there. So,
I
but
honestly
we
found
were
that like
growing pretty steady, and then all of a sudden, boom! And it's because what's that company's name? Microsoft? No. Who bought Instagram? Oh, Facebook did. Yeah.
yeah, Meta or whatever.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Facebook owns Instagram, and
Yeah.
I can't stand trying to do business on Facebook. They make it so freaking hard and so difficult. You have to go hire somebody. Well, I don't want to do that.
Oh,
So
absolutely. I feel like this kind of interaction is great for you. Like I'll be, we you will tend to kind of fall flat on Instagram because of the attention span that people have on there, and we can't get a ton of voice, we can't get a ton of words. But and YouTube would be a lot of it would be a lot of effort for you. But having you on so many different podcasts would be great because I love just hearing you talk. Like I can listen to you talk for hours. Whereas like a little post on Instagram, it's like it's not it's not even it's a micro dose of Kip, you know?
yep, yep. Well, here's how I feel about it. If you like what I do, then maybe you should pay me so I can keep on doing it.
Where do you want people to call you to work with you? Like how much work do you like to do? What kind of clients you want?
I got hit up about a year and a half ago. I was getting so many readings, the big readings. These readings take me probably 6 to 8 hours of prep.
Holy shit.
And by the time I'm done, the written version is over 40 pages long. I mean, 40 pages of text, no images, no big blank spaces, 40 solid pages. That's 4 hours of recording.
Yeah.
So, and I was doing that for $250, I think. 50 bucks more than Shaitan was charging for a 90-minute reading way back when.
That's
Uh,
wild, kid.
so right now, I like doing sessions because I like to talk
Mm-hmm.
and I like the interaction. I'm a 4/6 profile. I
Mm-hmm.
like interacting with people. I enjoy it. I love interacting with 4/6s because you're pretty good though. I'm impressed.
I'll take it. Thanks, Kip.